and welcome back to the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, where we are going to talk about the matchups coming up this week. Now, there's so many different matchups that are still yet to be played coming up for this week, and I'm going to be talking about the big ones, one of the big nights that's going to be happening tonight. Actually, is going to be the Phoenix Suns going against the Dallas Mavericks. Obviously, Kyrie and Kevin Durant, they both used to play on the same team at one point, so there's obviously beef between those two players there with their time on Brooklyn. Not to mention how Luka Doncic always has his best performances against Phoenix. If you remember a few years ago, 2 years ago to be more precise, the Suns got embarrassed at home, and Luka Doncic was the main reason for that. It was a really bad loss for the Suns because they were the favorites to win that series. Obviously, the matchup of having those two go against each other is just going to be great. Those two being Luka Doncic and Devin Booker. They always have good matchups against each other, and I believe adding Kyrie and Kevin Durant into that mix with that matchup, it's just great offense all around. And you could even might even get some Bradley Beal action. You never know. But the main focus is going to be on those two, primarily. Now, that was obviously a really bad loss for the Suns 2 years ago. The matchup of having those two go against each other, it's going to be great. I personally think the Suns are going to come out on top in this matchup. It could go either way, though. Luka, he likes to go off. He's a different animal when he goes against Phoenix. So he might just prove me wrong. But I wouldn't be surprised if Phoenix ends up coming out on top simply because of how great their offensive firepower actually is. We also have a very anticipated matchup at the center position going in later tonight. That is Victor Wembanyama going against Chet in a very intense battle for Rookie of the Year. They're both top two in Rookie of the Year candidate. So there's a lot of anticipation going into this matchup. Chet is coming off of back-to-backs where he didn't particularly play well in this one win, but he didn't really have to since his team is really good and can end up winning these games without him, which is the biggest difference between him and Victor, in my opinion. Not to mention efficiency. It's like I said before in my previous episode, Victor deserves to win Rookie of the Year, and he might not prove it in the wins category, but he should be able to prove it in the total stats category. I think Wemby is going to outplay Chet in this game, not to a ridiculous degree like how it was last night, where even with Wemby scoring 33, Joel Embiid scored 70. I don't think it's going to end up being like that, but I do think that it is going to be a battle. They're both going to have a good night. I believe Victor is going to be the one that ends up out-dueling him. However, I believe that the Thunder are going to be the team that ends up coming on top. The Spurs are not a good team. As sad as it is to say, Victor Wembanyama does not have a great cast, so I do not believe they are going to be able to come up with a win against this high-powered team. The Celtics also go up against the rest of the matchups that are happening. They're against like low-seeded teams. They don't necessarily affect the brackets or anything. So tomorrow, the Boston Celtics go up against the Miami Heat at 7:30. I personally think this is a game to watch out for. This matchup will show if the Heat have what it takes now. I don't know if Terry Rozier is eligible to play in this game, but if he is, we will see if they become a much better team offensively with him on the roster. The matchup will show that if the Heat have what it takes to compete with one of the top teams in the East right now, especially since this was a team that beat them in order to make the finals in the last year. So it's a very good matchup, very highly anticipated. If Jimmy Butler plays this game, and Jason Tatum, I'm assuming, is definitely going to play this game, I think they will both put on a great show. They'll have a great game, and they'll go at each other blow for blow. It's very, it doesn't determine seeding because of how high the Boston Celtics are. But if they end up meeting them in the postseason, then it could definitely be bad news for Boston if they end up losing in these regular season games, because a lot of these regular season games they give us like a story of what we need to expect going into the playoffs sometimes, especially the ones going late into the season. Those are the real playoff games. Like these ones, wait till the regular season like really picks up after All-Star break. Now, in some of the other matchups, Joel Embiid was just coming off of his 70-point game going against the Pacers, and he will once again go against the Indiana Pacers. Actually, no, pardon me. Excuse me for that. He just came off a 70-point game, and he is set to play the Indiana Pacers. Excuse me for that. He is set to play them tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And the Pacers have been going against really good teams, and they've also beaten a lot of really good teams. They beat the Bucks several times, as I mentioned previously. If Tyrese plays, I don't know if he'll play, but I'm not entirely sure if that'll be enough to stopping Joel Embiid and the Sixers. Now, like I said, like they've been a high-powered offense so far, so anything can happen if they're able to hit their shots. But I don't think anything is stopping Joel Embiid right now. I don't see any rim protectors doing that in the league, and I don't see Miles Turner doing that. Embiid will not be held to under 30 points in that game, and the Pacers don't necessarily have the best defense, especially not at that position. So with that in mind, I don't think that Joel Embiid is going to lose in this game. Crucial PG mentions in the chat, love his game. Me personally, I don't like his game. Me personally, like I think his game is just, it's not fun to watch, in my opinion. It's a little boring, but who am I to judge? He's the one that's getting 70 points, not me. The Lakers play against the Chicago Bulls tomorrow. Zach LaVine didn't play in his last game, so right now, if you're a Lakers fan, that's good news, simply because you need this win. If you are a Lakers fan, you're 22-23 right now. The recent loss coming from the Clippers, as I mentioned before. LaVine hasn't been playing, neither has LeBron, which is also something that you should be worrying about. Starting to look a little bit more like LeBron might be taking a little more breaks now, seeing as All-Star break is coming up around the corner. Alex Caruso, a former Laker favorite, it's anyone's game at this point. With who's going to end up on top. So DeMar isn't really much of a reliable option as I thought he was on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm not entirely sure if I trust him to win this game for the Chicago Bulls. He doesn't do enough for the most part, in my opinion. Anthony Davis is still playing, so I'm sure he's going to have a pretty good game against the Bulls. The Wolves go up against Washington, which should be an easy win for them. However, given that they recently lost to the Hornets, I'll include this in the segment anyway. I already mentioned before how with the team they have and the length and these players and a lot of their methods of beating you, it makes them a great team to win it all. They have a great guard, great defense, good length, makes it difficult, makes shot contests a lot more apparent. They do, however, have an immaturity problem. The coach said this over their recent loss while Karl Anthony Towns was having his ridiculous 62-point game. They played immature. It was bad ball. This was a problem that Jimmy Butler had recently with the team. Hasn't really changed them yet. Obviously, one of their players was having a great game, so it makes sense that maybe they go a little stupid here and there, but still wasn't really wise. Wasn't something that they necessarily needed to do, and it resulted to them losing, which obviously, if you lose because of your own fault, that's much worse than losing because the other team was better than you. Losing is losing regardless, I understand that, but if you have the ability to like impact that in a way and you just don't, that hurts you a lot more and it hurts your team much more, in my personal opinion. Some more matchups that we could talk about going in Friday. The Phoenix Suns are going up against the Indiana Pacers. Again, assuming if Tyrese can play, I believe that is going to be a very high-scoring game, and the two sides are going to go blow for blow at each other in two completely different ways. Tyrese is going to have a very high-paced offense, while the Suns are most likely going to run an isolation-heavy offense, and I believe it's going to be a good show offensively. And assuming, again, if Tyrese plays, because there's also the possibility that he doesn't play, as he hasn't been playing in some of these games, but we'll see. I also like to take this time to mention that I'm using the Quinnipiac podcast room, so shout out to them for allowing me to use this. And with that shout out, I would like to go off to a break and go into the fourth segment where we talk about the head coach of the Blazers, Chauncey Billups, filing a protest challenging the results of the recent game and the loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I will also be going on and acknowledging the comments in the chat because there is a few of them, but I will be back after this short break.